We humans, we want security. Perhaps we want freedom. We want independence. We want how we define success. But really, these things are not measurable. Money is a metric that we can measure. And so we tend to use money as a proxy for what we want, which at the end of the day really has nothing to do with money, but we don't know how else to track whether we're close to achieving what it is we want.
Welcome to the Wisdom We Share podcast, where ancient truths and modern intelligence weave together to inspire, ground, and shape us for a wiser, awakened life. I'm Anjani Amrit.
And I'm Robin Wald. And together we bring you fascinating conversations from the worlds of spirituality, science, and human behavior, so you can connect to your own inner wisdom, joy, and clarity, elevating the way you actually live your life.
Today, we're thrilled to be speaking with Laura Rotter, the founder of True Abundance Advisors, a fee-only financial planning firm in the United States grounded in aligning money with meaning. Laura spent more than 30 years managing institutional money on Wall Street before she shifted her life and her definition of abundance entirely, from earning more to using money to create a life worth living. Her work now focuses on guiding mid-career professionals, especially women, through major life transitions and helping them understand not just how to invest, but how to live. Laura co-creates financial life plans that integrate emotional clarity, values exploration, and mindful decision-making, helping clients move from fear and confusion about money to alignment, purpose, and confidence. On a personal level, I have known Laura for over 20 years and mostly actually relating to wisdom seeking and spiritual practice. So excited for us to get into a conversation today about money, values, and also spirituality and how that relates to money and our financial decision making and intelligence. So welcome. Thank you for being here with us.
Thank you, Robin and Anjani. I'm so excited to be here to see where this conversation goes.
Amazing. So let's start with this. You worked on Wall Street in a very male-dominated, high-powered, intense kind of environment around finance. And at some point, you made a shift and decided this just is not for me anymore. I would love to hear about what was the catalyst for that decision. Like, what were the things you struggled with in making that move, and where has it landed you?
It's a great question, and I can, I think about how far I can go back. I have often attributed the initial catalyst that then probably took about a decade to play out with meeting you, Robin. As I look back, I was always a very spiritual kid, and then for various reasons, moved away from my intuitive sense and my sense of connection to something bigger than myself until you arrived teaching yoga at a class I attended. And that began a subtle shift that had me searching for what I might want to do differently than what I was doing. I still remember having a book, 90 Days to a New Life Direction, where there was an encouragement to pick three career paths and interview three people that had done each. One of them was yoga teacher, and I interviewed you as well as other yoga teachers, ended up doing a yoga teacher training and teaching some yoga part-time. I thought about becoming a rabbi and interviewed three people who had become rabbis at an older age, and they enjoyed going to school and writing papers, and that wasn't what I was interested in doing. And finally, I interviewed about becoming a financial advisor for women. I still didn't have, as a New Yorker, I will say, didn't have the balls to walk away from what was quite a lucrative career. And I will tell another, in my mind, sort of spiritual story quickly. I worked in Manhattan. I took a day off. This was end of 2013 to attend it was really almost a prayer and meditation retreat hosted by an organization, the Institute of Jewish Spirituality. I was journaling at the time. I still have the journal that I wrote in Metro North on the way into work, I think a day or two later, where I had decided after that day that I was going to take control of my life. I was not happy. I was working at City Court at the time, and I was going to call my boss into his office and make some recommendations for how the day, our routine might change so that I was more engaged in the day to day. As an example, we had morning meetings with our backs towards each other. Nobody would look at each other, and we'd say, no news out on my investment. And I was going to suggest that we look at each other and that we engage more. And instead, he called me into his office and said that it was not for cause, that they were letting 100 people go from the group. And I was part of a very large layoff with quite a generous severance package. And that, to me, I still get chills thinking about that. I feel like the universe
Mm.
said, you're ready to not be a victim, but to actually take control of your life. And so now, here you go. What's next? So that was the end of 2013. So crazy, 12 years ago.
It's such an interesting story. The ways in which we come to our destiny, or the ways in which our destiny calls us towards it, and I do feel that destiny always plays a role in everything that we do and see and act through. And so for me, that's destiny. As a similar story to mine is working itself through you. And I love that. If we need whatever we need, when it comes to our destiny, we will get in order for us to get on the right path from wherever we're going. And it still takes balls, Laura, it still takes balls to take that next step. You could have gone back into another one of those jobs. And so I want to kind of say that it's, you still had the courage to follow your heart and your dreams. And I think because you did that, you're able to share that with the people, especially women that you work with today, having gone through that yourself. And what I'm really interested in is exploring today, because you talk about spirituality and you talk about, money and financial meaning. For you, how we manage and how we relate to money and what we project onto it, our fear of it, how we defer it, and sometimes unconsciously how we give our power away through it. How do you see money as what I'd term a mirror of consciousness?
If you are listening to this podcast, you are likely committed to personal growth and open to new and interesting perspectives that you can integrate into your daily life. One amazing way to expand your awareness of your wants, needs, patterns, and goals is through what I offer as a cosmic wisdom coach. A professional natal, transit, or relationship astrology reading can help you make sense of your life and choices through an evolutionary and archetypal lens. Impactful one-on-one coaching supports you to tap into your own resourcefulness and problem solving. I am so honored to partner with you for your growth, well-being, and success. You can learn more or book a session at www.robinwald.com. Use code WISDOM to receive a Wisdom We Share listener discount on any service. You can also sign up for my mailing list to receive useful monthly cosmic wisdom teachings.
It's a great question. So many ways to answer it. What comes to my mind is actually something a guest that I interviewed said, a guest I interviewed on my podcast, and has really stuck with me, which is that we humans, we want security. Perhaps we want freedom. We want independence. We want how we define success. But really, these things are not measurable. Money is a metric that we can measure. And so we tend to use money as a proxy for what we want, which at the end of the day really has nothing to do with money, but we don't know how else to track whether we're close to achieving what it is we want. And so one of the questions I ask people when they first come to me, whether or not they become clients, it's a way of gauging whether they'd be interested in my process overall, is what about money is important to you? And it's phrased in such a way that if you're not an abstract thinker and if you've come for me to me purely to see more zeros in your bank account, then the answer might be, huh? In which case, I know that there's really no reason to continue the conversation. And as you might imagine, having asked the question, the answers tend to be, and then of course I ask follow-up questions to get more of an idea of their history and who they are. But it's either security or freedom. It's somewhere along those lines, and often reflecting the messages and the circumstances in which we grew up. So if there was very little financial security growing up in your home, then that's likely the attribute you're going to give money. And or if you're coming out of a stifling marriage, then freedom and independence is the attribute you're going to give your money. And I know Anjani and of course Robin having asked me the question that whether or not that's actually what you achieve through your money, there's often little correlation, right? I work with people that, have on paper more than enough money and yet are so afraid to spend it and never have a sense of security or a sense of enoughness. And then other people that you might look at their bank account and feel like they should feel very unstable, and yet there's a sense of openness and embracing of their lives and their day to day. And sometimes it surprises people who don't work with money that, you feel like you should have, like, how much money do they have? Oh, so they're okay. But it's really correlated to your spending, right? And spending,
Oh, sorry.
sorry.
Before you educate us about that, because I know you have a lot of financial wisdom that you can educate us on, I want to go back to something you said, which is very much about mindset and really deeply held belief systems or narratives, right? That having a certain amount of money can mean very different things to different people in terms of what it represents. And I'm curious if you could say something about scarcity mindset versus abundance mindset, because obviously abundance is an important theme for you. It's in the title of your company, right? True Abundance Advisors. So how do you coach someone or guide someone or help someone to see when they're coming from scarcity mindset, and what does it look like to come from an abundance mindset? Not just regarding money, but around life, around possibility. What wisdom do you have about that?
Well, my first answer to you as a coach, Robin, is I don't know that I could make a direct correlation, for better or for worse, between my engagement with people and how they then engage with their own lives. I wish it was easier. What I am very aware of because of my own history, and I talk about it often, and hence the name True Abundance Advisors, is that we have at the very least three scarce resources: money, but time and energy. And we're always trading off one for the other. And for way too long in my own life, and having listened to your interview, Anjani, in your life as well, I was trading off my time and energy for money. And so my life did not feel abundant. I felt like time was scarce. And it really took a wake-up call for me to realize, and it seems so simple, but yet this sort of aha moment that, oh, I'm not going to get to do this over. Like if my week is spent waiting for that yoga class on Wednesday evening or the weekend where I could be with friends, and the rest of the week is just exhaustion and spending time with people I didn't respect or want to be with, I don't get a do-over. And this, awakening to the fact that I had been choosing to be a victim of my life. And so I I hope that by imparting that message to others, and I say it that way because I'm now thinking of clients that I work with, that it's very hard once you have a scarcity mindset to let it go. I mean, humans are meaning making machines, if you will. And so if you grew up with a feeling of scarcity, it's hard to let that go. I mean, I often talk about the different money stories that my husband and I grew up with and how I think we've worked our way through it. And his parents were, young, but children of the Depression. And his father, who was an academic and a brilliant man, once he had a family, became an insurance salesman. So the message that my husband has is that family and providing for your family is the most important thing. For better or for worse, I was the primary breadwinner. And so it sort of like fell onto my shoulders. And my father was more a child of the 60s. And the message was, I mean, didn't work well for him financially, but he went from job to job to job because I'm not happy. And so my message that I received was life is about finding what gives you joy. And so when I announced to my husband, to your point, Anjani, I'm not looking for another job on Wall Street. I'm done. I'm miserable. I am looking for something else. I got a lot of pushback, and it was a tremendous strain on our marriage because it's like, but you agreed to be the primary breadwinner. And I had
So
not.
what is the measure of success then, you would say, Laura? Because I think what I'm hearing from you, what I'm receiving here is that if it's not a metric, if it's not money, and if it's not even an abundant mindset, what is it? What intangible metric is there to measure success by?
So I feel the need to acknowledge my privilege as I answer this question because, as
Mhm.
I think it was my brother-in-law a number of years said to me when I was, sort of bitching about all the years I wasted on Wall Street, that like, well, but I'm privileged to have savings that enabled me to think about the question you just asked, number one. And number two, perhaps, I don't know if privilege is the right word, but I'm old enough to have the perspective as to what brings me alive. It's a Howard Thurman quote, I think, like, don't ask what the world needs. What the world needs is what makes you come alive. That sticks with me often. And I've come to recognize that it's not fair to expect to expect my 30-year-old children to have that same perspective. They're still trying to figure out what their expertise is, but now from my vantage point of age and some financial security, I really ask myself that question almost daily, like, what can I do today that makes me come alive? And these are little things like, Robin has, well, I have a dog. We just celebrated his fifth forever home birthday. He was a rescue during COVID. Even when I get up and it's freezing out and I'm walking the dog, this gives me joy. I both interact with him and I feel the wind on my face. I mean, this is from a woman. I had to be at a trading desk at 7 a.m. I had to wake up early in the morning. And so to have flexibility in my day, for days to be different, to have time to do a podcast interview with you beautiful women. I don't take any of this for granted. And what I may take for granted, and I'm going to remind myself up right now as I look at your faces, is that I created this. I made this happen.
Yeah, exactly.
I was going to say I'm making myself cry. Anyway,
Well, I'm hearing that joy is the answer, and I would second that, because it brings us abundance. To me, I agree that that is abundance, having also lived a life imprisoned in the corporate world and given my time and money and power to that. Yes, I had way more money back then, but I was miserable and I was spending money in order to find some joy and never found it. And so I would agree with what you're saying, Laura. It doesn't need to be these massive leaps that we make. It's in the small things, finding joy and freedom in our choices. We are the collection of our choices that we make every single day. Hey there, Anjani Amrit here. Quick pause before we get back to the conversation. If you're the kind of person who listens to episodes like this one and then sits with it, turns it over, asks yourself the harder questions, wonders what it would actually look like to live differently, this is for you. I've created something called Within for exactly you, the one who's not just consuming wisdom, but genuinely looking to integrate it, to actually change from the inside out. Within is a membership where we go deeper with practices, guidance, and a community of people who are serious about their inner growth, not in a heavy way, in a real, grounded, and sustainable way. It's where the doing happens, where you take what resonates and actually work with it in your own life. The doors aren't open yet, but the wait list is. First access and something special goes to everyone on it when we launch. If it's calling you, the link is in the show notes, www.anjaniamrit2eyes.com/within membership waitlist. Now, back to the conversation.
I wanted to actually ask about values, because one thing that you talk about a lot is about aligning your money with your values. And I'm wondering if you could share some wisdom about that for anybody listening, whether it's a young person first starting out in their life and trying to amass some savings and security financially, or someone at a transition point in their life where they want to leave that job that is soul crushing to pursue something that is more aligned with their passion or skill, or someone later in life who's thinking about winding down, and how do they mindfully, you started to speak before about spending, like how do they really align how they spend or how they save with what they value? Like, what's some wisdom you have for us to think about as we make those choices?
good question. I'm going to look to my left. I have my values up on the wall next to me, and they are spirituality, family, meaningful work, play, and health. And I'm not unique in saying that experiences, I think at the end of the day, or if you're going to spend your money beyond just, keeping the heat and the lights on and a roof over your head, experiences are what stick with you. So if I look at myself as an example, I think, or I know where I spend the most money is on travel and family vacations. We're a family of 5, and it's so nice that each of my kids now have significant others that sometimes we like more than we like our kids. And so anytime we travel, there's now, 8 of us. And I love that I'm able to treat my kids to, whether it's a ski weekend or, an Airbnb on a lake or something. So just looking at how I spend my money, I know that that's important to me. And by the same token, I'm thinking of a client I work with who is finally about to leave a soul-crushing job. I know his family is so important to him, and he's on a plane traveling constantly and, has put on weight and is not sleeping well. And so we may, using him as an example of family being the highest value and yet not spending time with family. And, I think we would all say health is a value, but not, spending time sleeping or eating well. So it's not a stretch to say that you often, especially in this get it. I'm thinking of starting a podcast called Stop the Relentless Pursuit of More. I mean, our culture is about more, a bigger house, a better car, bigger vacations. And then so what's needed in terms of sacrifice of time and health and things we value in order to achieve what our culture tells us we should achieve. So we're often not correlating our values with our money.
I
And
think it's the point, isn't it, when we when we identify our values and then correlate them with how we use our money, how not just spend it, but the way in which we approach it and how we honor money in our life and our own self, then everything starts to change. And I'd agree with you, Laura, that it's not about more. There is such a conditioning in our culture that more is more. And actually, it's still less is more. I know that myself. You know it yourself. We both worked in high powered jobs, earning truckloads of money. It doesn't bring you the success story that society tells you it brings. So, what would you say to a client? Say a client came to you and they said, "Look, I'm in this soul crushing job. I want to get out. How do I do that? What advice would you offer them in terms of then helping them? Because I know you're not going to say, quit your job, man, or quit your job, lady, and just get out of there. What advice would you give that person?"
so before I answer your question, and this has been, I mean, Robin knows me to be a lifelong learner. I spent 2025 in a mentorship with gentleman George Kinder, the father of financial life planning, and am now sort of in a holding period till I think I start a particular coaching program. And so before I give, some real dollars and cents advice, I would say that when I work with clients, I ultimately want them to be so moved by the vision they have of what their life could be that they answer that question. Because I can't be someone's mommy or daddy and say, you're unhappy. Okay, let's build an emergency fund. And then, okay, you need this much money from you. It has to come from them. And it has to come from their heart. It has to come from them having a picture of being home to drop their kids off or pick them up from school or remembering what brings them joy and making more time for it if it's not a full-time thing. And then they say, you know what? I don't need to buy the car I thought I was going to buy, and so it's ultimately their emotions and their heart and their being drawn to something other that will help them figure it out, whether it's moving to a less expensive neighborhood or so. That's the journey, frankly, that I'm on, along with my clients, of helping them hear themselves and figure out what's next for them and how to get there. Because when we started, if you have a feeling of scarcity, it doesn't matter how much somebody says to you, but you have enough money. Sometimes I do feel like shaking them, and they're not going to hear me.
Hmm.
It has to come from themselves.
I would love to dive a little bit deeper into vision, and maybe we can just speak about spiritual practice there, because When I think about vision, the astrologer in me is thinking Piscean, Neptunian, Jupiterian type of energy, which is really about having ideals and imagination and what else is possible and how else might I grow? What can I imagine? I know you're very, you have your moon in Sagittarius from the astrology work we've done together, right? So there's that desire to always be seeking alignment with a higher sense of connection and purpose to a vision. Not everybody naturally engages that way. I think we're all being called to start to engage that way this coming year with Saturn and Neptune together moving into Aries, because Neptune is about that bigger vision, imagination. And then Saturn is about being willing to commit and do the work it takes to actually make that real. So we'll see how that affects all of us. But for you personally, I'm curious about your spiritual practices. I know you started with yoga in my class 20 plus years ago, and that moved something for you. But what other spiritual practices do you engage in regularly that help you to tap into your own sense of vision and purpose?
Well, I am a regular meditator. One thing about me is once I, set up things to do, I'm very good, very strong superego. I'm very good at following them. I have Saturn in Capricorn in my second house. And Virgo at my midheaven. I'm good at following rules. And so I meditate for 20 minutes every day. I did actually try recently to meditate for 30 minutes, but felt 20 was okay. I practice yoga regularly during the week, and I also I talked about this briefly with you, Robin. I've been pulling a card every morning to
A
just,
tarot card.
I was pulling a tarot card. This may end up being a little like advertisement. Seth Godin, who's a marketing guy, just started these prompt cards
Nice.
various things, and this is specifically for spiritual information. And you put he has an artifact in Claude. I can talk about it some other time. And you put the card that you've pulled in, and then I've been saying morning intention, and then it gives you an interpretation, and you can keep asking it questions. So I've been sort of in playing with the prompt cards lately each morning, and just I like setting a morning intention that way.
Yeah, lovely. I think having some kind of daily grounding practice is so important for all of us in order for us to remember that we're human. And we also have this other aspect to self, which is our soul, our spirit, that is beyond the intellect. I do have a burning question about women and money, because the clients that I mentor, predominantly women, predominantly, I'd say probably all of them really struggle with making larger investments for themselves and often defer or have deferred that decision to their partners or even the males in their family. I'm talking about not just buying a house or buying a car or buying something, but investing in themselves, investing in coaching, investing in mentoring, investing in guidance, investing in financial advice for themselves. What do you think stops women from investing in themselves in that way? And how do you feel that this then affects women and their financial abundance compared to men generally?
Such a great question. I often have told this story about a woman I've been working with for a number of years now. Actually, recently bought a home on her own. She had been divorced when she first came to me, and we met. And she didn't call me back and actually start working with me, Anjani, until a year later. And she said to me, and it has always stuck with me, I didn't respect myself enough to pay your fee. And as a generalization, I would agree that I found that I love working with single women, and single women are often unwilling to pay what it costs to work with me. And I will then, often end up working more with couples. I think women are willing to invest in their kids and in their families. I don't know what it is that feels like, I don't deserve to spend that kind of money on myself. And I think just a lot of fear. And that's in general with my profession, because there's so many salesmen in my profession that I feel like when people first come to me, there's like this guard up of like, okay, what is she going to try to sell me? And what is she going to try to do? And I'm just aware of it, and I think women more specifically come with that fear. I think it's interesting. I know statistics will show that women, because once they get the education, are more stable, have better investment returns, because men, they want to like, oh, what's the story on the top of the newspaper? Oh, I'm going to buy that, and then I'm going to sell it, and then I'm going to buy. And so they often underperform over time. Women who will like put which is what I advocate, put a low cost portfolio in place. And you really only change that allocation when your life changes, that we're not trying to beat the market or, make tactical changes based upon news. And so are known to be better investors over time than men are. And
That's
I,
interesting. That's interesting. That's a great
Yeah.
statistic to hear, because I think it'll be encouraging for women to start to move towards making the investment, knowing that they actually make better investors in the long run once they get into it, and investing in themselves, investing their time, their energy, their money in themselves is so vital for women to step into their power. So I really appreciate that statistic. Yeah, it's
Yeah.
great.
Yeah,
and
Laura, I know that on your website you offer a workbook that people can work with to start exploring some questions around their own values, around their own self-worth, around their own fears, around money, investing, some of those stories that may be holding them back as obstacles. Do you want to tell people how they can access that? We can obviously include it in the show notes as well, but if someone's really wanting to take more ownership of their both of aligning their money and abundance with their values, like where would you guide them to begin?
Well, if you're asking how to access the workbook, I know there's a link on my website, and I will, of course, give you the link. The best clarity, and of course, I recommend working with a financial planner to get this clarity, which is just like understand, number one, what you own and what you owe, which is basically your net worth. What are the assets? What are your bank accounts? What's your investment accounts? Do you own a home? Do you own a business? And then what do you owe? Do you have credit card debt? Do you have student loan debt? Do you have a mortgage? And so just have that picture of what's your net worth, which is your assets minus your liabilities. And the second most important thing to know, which so many people don't, because our households are just a mishmash of credit card bills and, things going in and out that we don't pay attention to, know your cash flow, which is not, many of us know because we're W-2 employees, like, okay, this is what I earn per year. Well, but that has nothing to do with your cash flow, because taxes come out of that, and your retirement plan contributions come out of that, and your health insurance premiums come out of that. So what actually gets deposited into your bank account each month? And then what have you committed to pay for? I always like to say, even if you lie in bed all month eating bonbons, well, your electric bill will come out, your rent or your mortgage payment will come out, your Netflix, what are the subscriptions that you've committed to? And so many times we don't even know what half these subscriptions are. And ideally, that's, a half or less of what's coming into your bank account. So know those numbers. You might be surprised. So because people come to me, especially I live in an expensive area, and they say, I don't even spend money and I have nothing left at the end of the month. I'm like, well, you have your gym membership, you have that box of clothing that comes to your house on in a subscription each month. Like, do you need the perfume of the month, and then they feel like, oh, I can't go to a restaurant or I can't buy a pair of shoes because the commitments, the recurring payments are so high. So those are the two things I would say in terms of just putting putting in place knowledge of what your numbers are.
Yeah, that's super helpful. That's really, really helpful. And I know from working with my clients, Anjani, I don't know if you've experienced this, that a lot of people really do have fear and avoidance around talking about or looking at the actual numbers. Like
Yeah.
they don't want to make a budget. They don't want to look at how much because there's something very real about when it's really there on paper, you can't wish it away anymore.
Right.
So bringing intentionality, bringing awareness, bringing consciousness, going back to Anjani's point about money and financial decisions is very linked with our consciousness. So elevating our consciousness to be able to look at that honestly so that we can take more charge and ownership around that.
And very empowering. Like to your point, Anjani, so many women, and I don't begrudge it. I watch it in the next generation. We all have different roles. So if your role is to be the one home with the kids and your husband's role is to be working full time and he takes care of the money, well, you don't have time. You delegate it. And I'm now working with someone whose husband passed and was never in charge with the money. And yes, it's scary for her. And it's so empowering to finally understand, like, oh, and this is the decision I need to make. And I can see her body language shifting, that she now has chosen to start taking steps towards understanding and being in control, as opposed to, as you said, Robin, like, I just don't want to look. It scares me too much.
Yeah, I think that's the point. If I were to sum up our conversation, it really would be, yes, it's scary, but if we walk towards those scary things, that's how we become empowered as humans, as citizens. We empower ourselves by looking at the things that we feel like we're not very competent at. And, I always say to my clients, do it with fearless love and appreciation for yourself rather than judgment or blame, because that helps us step over that fear more gently, more safely. If we can just have that fearless love and compassion for ourselves, that self that is scared, then we can hold the hand of that part of us and walk into those things that are, a little bit scary, but open our eyes and empower ourselves. And it doesn't need to be massive changes. It's just educating ourselves. And I used to be the one doing my BAS every quarter going, I hate doing my BAS. And I started just saying to myself, I love doing my BAS and I'm really good at it. And now I genuinely do love doing it, and I'm genuinely really good at it.
I
And I
don't
always pat myself
understand
on the
Is
what
that
back.
taxes? Is that
what
taxes?
My
is that?
my
Oh, okay.
quarterly taxes. And I pat myself on the back once I've done them. Every time I'll go, well done, you're so clever. You just say things like, that self-talk is so important.
Yes.
So thank
Right.
you so much. Thank you so much for that. So where can we find you if we're looking for you? We're looking for some advice. Where can we find you, Laura?
So my website is True Abundance Advisors with an O. .com, and you can email me at Laura, Laura, at trueabundanceadvisors.com. I do have a newsletter that merges mindfulness and money. And I also have a podcast, Making Change with Your Money, where I interview women who've been through a big life transition, come out the other side so that, we all know that it's possible. And
Amazing.
we're all examples of it, all three of us.
Yeah, so important to be inspired in our own lives and inspire others with our stories. Laura, thank you so much. This was really, really great wisdom and education. And I think this conversation is going to help a lot of people to, take some ownership and be able to move forward around their understanding about financial matters in their life. So thank you so much for spending time with us today.
Thank
you,
you,
Laura.
both of you. This was great.
Thank you so much for tuning into the Wisdom We Share podcast. We hope today's episode sparked some new insight, imagination, and practical tools you can integrate into your daily life.
Continue this journey with us by subscribing, sharing, and dropping us a review. Until next time, stay wise.